With a voice like mine, you don't need a microphone. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good lunch and the opportunity to network, catch up with old friends and new, and to discuss, hopefully, some of the topics that we've been presented with this morning. A really good, a good show of it this morning. Some very interesting and diverse range of topics. So I personally have really enjoyed that, and I know this afternoon will be as equally interesting, if not more so. So thank you for staying around. It'll definitely be worth your time. We're going to kick off this afternoon's presentations with Angus Keddy, Director of Process Safety Matters. Angus is a chemical engineer with almost 40 years experience in the international high hazard industries. During the first 25 of those years, he had roles in diverse fields such as design, operations, commissioning, proposals and training. Latterly, via the companies he has founded, AK Safety First and Process Safety Matters, he has led scores of process hazard assessments, also developing and presenting associated training courses. So I'd like to welcome Angus to the stage to deliver his presentation on how to develop an AI Adept process safety mindset. Thank you, Angus.
Get my glasses on, otherwise there'll be trouble. Okay, so yeah, thanks so much, Tal. So good afternoon. As Tal said, my name is Angus Keddy. I'm a chemical engineer, as you said, with 40 years experience. I'm not going to repeat that, 15 years as HazardEx chair. But also, between you and me, I am a wannabe Sherlock Holmes. Over the past few years, I've engaged with many interesting and learned individuals, both in and out of those HazardEx, and not a few HazardEx supporting IT and laterally AI tools, which has directly led to a distillation, pun intended, a product of which is this paper. So today, I intend to present you a short history of the use of IT in HazardEx, what on earth is an AI adept process safety mindset, core strengths of HazardEx today, some candidates for retention, some AI engagement issues to consider, stories from the front line of AI in HazardEx, and some conclusions. So the views expressed are my own, and I'd be amazed if they mapped exactly to yours. However, my goal is to present them in an engaging way, such that some of them may influence your own views and ultimately actions in this important subject area. So to a short history of the use of IT in HazardEx. HazardEx, or Hazard Inoperability Study, was developed by the British chemical company ICI, Imperial Chemical Industries, in the 1960s in response to a dramatic increase in operational fatal accidents. It's a rigorous approach based upon the premise that the most serious loss of containment accidents on high hazard processing facilities occur when deviations from smooth operation happen. So, what was the state of information technology in the UK in the 1960s? This is the time of NASA's Herculean efforts to put a man on the moon, the ultimate success of which depended in part on the computing power available. I pulled this toy out of a Christmas cracker at some point this century. It had significantly more computing power than the guidance computer which enabled Neil Armstrong to stand on the moon and be safely transported back in 1969. So, which tools were used in those first ICI HazardEx? According to ChatGPT, paper-based P&IDs and flowsheets, each HazardEx node was marked on blueprint drawings, manual recording, notes written by scribes, often on ruled paper or typewritten templates, and communication tools, dictation and stenography were common for documentation. So, no IT support at all. Fast forward to when I had my first encounter as a junior process engineer acting as a scribe in the late 1980s. I remember, and ChatGPT concurs, recording the conclusions via word processing on a basic computer. The P&IDs were generated by CAD, but still printed and marked up in the original way. The core team was present and correct in the room where it happened. Fast forward again to 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic. HazardEx supporting technology had been advancing steadily, but not implemented evenly. For example, the internet was launched in 1983, while screen sharing emerged only in 2007. One of the impacts of COVID was that the means of moving Hazard out of the room suddenly had to be leveraged, sometimes generating considerable personal discomfort. We've all been there. I was fortunate to have two projects which made the step change from in-person to remote. However, in common with most practitioners, I didn't have much of a template for this new paradigm. I found the first few months quite brutal at times and made mistakes, one of which almost got me fired. But I persisted. So, where are we at the start of 2026? Currently in the Hazard realm, Hazard team members, myself included, are increasingly using ChatGPT and other LLM programs to informally complement the review process. Design contractors are engaging with reviews, which include formal contributions from AI Hazard tools, such as Kairos Tech Hazard Assistant. Plant owners are developing AI process safety tools, which aim to drastically reduce or perhaps eliminate human intervention in the PHA process. One of my favourite films is the original Blade Runner. Set in a near future dystopia, the visuals for which reflected director Ridley Scott's upbringing in the industrial landscape of the northeast of England, where ICI dominated. I see another possible near future dystopian outcome for Hazard. AI tools generate model and human participants can override output, but it does so using companionable language. Human participants are increasingly unable or unwilling to challenge the output, progressively weakening their ability to provide the necessary pushback to protect the boundaries of functionally acceptable performance and prevent associated accidents. The rate of future multiple fatality events will increase, but only the AI technology will really know why. Operators will not be able to blame AI when things go wrong. Is there another way? And if so, how can we try to achieve it? What on earth, I hear you thinking, is an AI Adept process safety mindset? This is Carol Dwerck, American psychologist, who introduced the world to the concept of mindset. In her 2006 book, The New Psychology of Success, she argues that far from being fixed, an individual's intellectual assets can be grown by application of hard work, error acceptance, training, and tenacity. As she says, in a fixed mindset, students believe their basic abilities, their intelligence, their talents are just fixed traits. They have a certain amount, and that's that. In a growth mindset, students understand that their talents and abilities can be developed through effort, good teaching, and persistence. And this is me, a Scottish boy who became a Hazard chair. For most of that evolution, I now recognise that I had a fixed mindset. I was a clever child who excelled at rote learning and exams. This mindset continued into my current professional role, where I felt I had to know all the answers to the Hazard questions I was asking. An epiphany of sorts happened in 2014. I was taking my mum and her partner to vote in the Scottish independence referendum. For them, voting took place in a primary school in the local village. As I was waiting for them to vote, I casually looked around the classroom and was struck by one of the displays, which was on the theme of learning from errors. The banner said, "Mistakes are our friends." Since then, especially having read Ms. Dweck's book, I am committed to trying to develop a growth mindset. In her book, Ms. Dweck customises her theory for various life themes such as sports, relationships, and even business. I'm going to go further and suggest that we can apply the concept of to the topic that pays our wages, mine at least, and has brought us here together today, process safety. I believe we can productively think of fixed and growth process safety mindsets. Baldly speaking, a classic fixed process safety mindset would be one which was developed and promptly frozen at the point of initial learning. In my case, this was my first few chairing experiences in 2011. A kind of flash freezing, if you will, not unlike the fruit preservation technique. An example of fixed process safety mindset was seen in the reaction of some to the impact of COVID-19 on process hazard assessment. That this modified version was an anathema to the spirit of ICI and would wither as soon as the pandemic was over. Now, more than 5 years on, we can see that remote participation has become an established part of a new, effective, hybrid and flexible approach. With the introduction of AI-infused process safety tools, I believe the challenge posed by fixed mindsets is magnified. Why is this? Compared to the impact of COVID-19, which was a linear, predicted, one-time event, the current AI encroachment is dynamic, unpredictable, and multidimensional. I therefore feel that a novel mindset approach is appropriate, neither wholly fixed nor growth. An AI adept mindset can recognize and try to retain the best from the past while recognizing that the status quo is shifting and endeavoring to learn and apply approaches which will underpin success now and soon. So, core strengths of HazardEx today. With my Sherlock Holmes deerstalker hat on, I will examine the case of some candidates for attention. Firstly, should we still be doing HazardEx at all? ICI employee Trevor Kletz, in other words, were tasked with investigating the root causes of the 1960s fatal accident rate increase and proposing effective countermeasures. They came up with HazardEx, guideword prompts eliciting credible causes, ultimate consequences, and relevant safeguards to examine design ahead of construction and operation. ICI implemented this proposal and found, to their relief, that the FAR dramatically reduced, saving around 50 future lives in the process, many of which would likely have been lost in major accident hazards, MAH, with 4+ fatalities. A LARP, which stands for as low as reasonably practicable, the demonstration of which has been a key test for high hazard operational safety in the UK for decades. Essentially, scenario residual risks are only tolerable if the cost of doing more is grossly disproportional to the benefit gained. This corresponds to the orange region in the image on the right. Before the implementation of HazardEx for future designs, ICI facilities were almost certainly not a LARP, as the cost of carrying out those HazardEx was grossly disproportional to the benefit gained, was not grossly disproportional, to the benefit of the lives gained. Modern HazardEx, however, are extremely expensive. The feed front-end engineering design HazardEx of a $100 million capex plant, for example, a small green ammonia plant or a modular BTX plant, is around $250,000. Can a LARP demonstration still be claimed for HazardEx for such facilities? ChatGPT responses led me to conclude that for every dollar spent on HazardEx, $2 of operational MAH is prevented, working available upon request. So this is a LARP, and even cost benefit positive, which strongly suggests we should still do HazardEx. And the second candidate is the consensus of unlike minds. Renowned psychologist Daniel Kahneman introduces us to System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 is fast, automatic, intuitive, operating with little or no effort. It is our default, predictable, and therefore ideal for replication by AI. In contrast, System 2 is slow, deliberate, conscious, requiring intentional effort. A conscious conscience, if you like. Rather like Jiminy Cricket in the 1940 Disney classic, guiding Pinocchio to make choices which align with Pinocchio's values. At any moment in the HazardEx review, a team member can vocalize their inner Jiminy to override default trajectory. If this interjection prompts another member to concur, we have ourselves a sustainable rebellion capable of shifting the consensus. These type of dynamics, where unlike minds collaborate, can yield gems which would not otherwise have occurred. A couple of years ago, I was chairing a Scottish whisky facility HazardEx. One team member suggested a potential initiation of a deviation which could lead to a major LOC and fatalities. Another member countered, correctly, that this was double jeopardy. where two independent causes are required for the consequence to be credible, conventionally discounted in HazardEx. The third member, however, then noted that they had experienced this initiation sequence on their own plant in Ireland, and existing safeguards had prevented an escalation. Accordingly, the HazardEx team's collective intelligence had unearthed an MAH gem, one which would have likely have remained buried if they'd not been able to tap into it. I am confident you will remember the 1939 film The Wizard of Oz. Although now more than 80 years old, it continues to win hearts of new generations. The plot follows Dorothy in her quest to return home to Kansas from the land of Oz, aided by a disparate band of friends. They follow the yellow brick road to Emerald City, where they hope to be granted an audience with the wizard himself. Initially, they experience the wizard as a hologram head, which appeared to be magic and all-powerful. They were amazed, awed, and not a little frightened. I'd like to suggest that we consider this as an analogy for a collection of unlike mind team encountering an AI-infused HazardEx tool for the first time. So what are some of the relevant characteristics of such tools? To answer this, I'd like to introduce you to two more wizards, Ethan Mollick and Jens Rasmussen. Ethan Mollick is a professor of business at the esteemed Wharton School of Management in the US. Over the past few years, he has endeavoured to engage comprehensively with AI as a co-intelligence, leading him to develop 4 tenets. Always invite AI to the table, be the human in the loop, treat AI like a person, but remember it's not. Assume this is the worst AI you will ever use. Jens Rasmussen was a Danish psychologist who created a model for organizational behavior, which is governed by 3 forces. Owner drive to maximize efficiency and accordingly profit. So it's the black arrow to the bottom right. Worker drive to minimize effort for the same pay, which is the black arrow to the top right. And defense of the boundary of functionally acceptable performance, which is the green arrow. In our industries, if this boundary is breached, accidents occur. Organizations have recognized the importance of this barrier, have long recognized the importance of this barrier, and acted to defend it by employing teams whose purpose is to understand the threats posed by the first 2 forces and act to counter them. The AI tools which are becoming increasingly available are often programmed to communicate in a companionable way, making it more soothing for us simply to accept their outcome without challenge, which we can probably only do from a position of understanding anyway. AI tools are a black box, only as good as the information they scrape, and programmed to give you an answer, no matter what. So, how are our troops engaging with these new tools in the front line of process safety? Last summer, I chaired the third of a series of week-long HazardEx at Parenco Dinlington Gas Facility, which is about 40 miles away from us here on the Yorkshire coast, East Coast. This facility is one of several that's been processing gas from the southern North Sea for decades. As part of the contract with Vices, for whom I was working, Parenco agreed to have their configuration modelled by Hazard Assistant. Although we made no specific reference to the tool during my week, which had been done in weeks 1 and 2, I got some anecdotal feedback from the team about how it had performed in earlier sessions. Team members noted that when referenced, Hazard Assistant output mostly aligned with the team's conclusions. It apparently identified most of the causes and suggested further elements related to associated scenarios. Team members seemed relatively unthreatened by its presence, perhaps because they had been told it was going to be there to complement the session and that it performed less well than they did. I recently chaired a multi-week HazardEx in the UAE for a complex, expensive configuration. In the first week, there was a rather tense discussion about the appropriateness of types and the similarity of complementary level transmitters. At one point, an operator representative pulled out his smartphone and said that he had consulted ChatGPT on the subject and went on to summarise its response, which, unsurprisingly, supported his perspective. The response of the other team members was interesting. They took this new information on board neutrally, perhaps because they were also informal users of LLMs in this context, treating it as additional contextual information which would help a consensus to form. A third story is in a 2024 press release, ADNOC announced the deployment of an AI-enabled process optimization technology called Neuron 5. The press release said, the tool autonomously monitors performance of critical equipment, enabling preventative maintenance and reducing operational downtime to boost efficiency. Pilot phase results indicate that Neuron 5 could reduce unplanned shutdowns by 50% and increase planned maintenance intervals by 20%. This is just one example of organizations investing heavily in technology to maximize their operating efficiency to ultimately boost future profits. This is a manifestation of the first of Rasmussen's 3 forces. And final example is, it seems to me that a little learned skepticism may go a long way to optimize process safety outcomes when engaging with AI process safety tools. As an example, let me introduce you to an exercise undertaken by one of my industry colleagues recently. He said, a few years ago, we had an external speaker who gave a talk about sighting gas detectors in offshore rigs. The presenter had analysed offshore hydrocarbon release data, and a high percentage of UK HSE reported releases were not detected by the plant gas detection system. The percentage of missed releases, he said, was approximately 50%, which I thought was very high at the time. I recently asked a hydrocarbon release AI assistant the following questions and got answers, which I think demonstrates that the AI app is very powerful, but users need to ask the right questions, and it helps if you know the answer. Human question. What percentage of reported hydrocarbon releases were detected by the gas detection system? AI tool answered. Out of all the reported hydrocarbon releases from 2016 to 24, approximately 2.2% were detected by the gas detection system. Human question. Please give me a breakdown by year. Fast forward through the iteration of questions and answers. Final AI tool answer. Here's a table showing detection methods for hydrocarbon releases 2016 to 2024, ordered by percentage of total events. 875 releases. So, the top line, you can see missed detection, human observation 50%. The tool got there in the end, but only when engaged with learned skepticism. So, to wrap up, I believe that if we judiciously apply Mollick's 4 tenets, we can strive to generate an AI adept process safety mindset. Always invite AI to the table. Engage actively with many current means of leveraging AI PHA tools, HazardEx Assistant, ChatGPT, others, to help decide how to launch your journey. Be the human in the loop. Ensure that you plan to have for human gatekeepers who iteratively interrogate the evolving AI to ensure sufficient understanding and pushback. Treat AI like a person, but remember it's not. Insist that your formal tools communicate with a style which doesn't lull human team members into the "but AI is our friend" trap. Clever but annoying might work best. And assume this is the worst AI you will ever use. Be prepared to keep evolving your approach until AI-supported high-hazard facilities are as safe as driverless trains. Furthermore, the Rasmus twin forces of owner and worker driving the organisation towards the rocks of incident can be effectively countered. Assuaging owners' efficiency drive by harvesting and presenting HazardEx gems, reducing the future cost of major accident hazards. Generate and apply a minority report column for dissenting team members, including AI-infused tool, to accelerate consensus. Also, assuaging workers' effort conservation drive by stimulating learned skepticism from human members to leverage their enthusiasm and agency to help uncover HazardEx gems. And last, but certainly not least in my mind, make HazardEx more fun to increase participants' emotional salary. Sci-fi writer Isaac Asimov wrote a short story in 1942 entitled Runaround, in which he introduced 3 rules of robotics. Asimov's rules generated some robot use boundary conditions and which tried to balance associated risks and rewards. It is perhaps a good time to start talking about a similar set of rules for the use of AI in process safety so that you and your new teammate can better support each other going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angus. I thought that was really exceptional, really enjoyable. Thank you for that. Very thought-provoking. Have we got any questions?
You have been a hazard leader for forever. And COVID, one of the problems is also cultural. Now, when you know the team working in a refinery in Scotland or wherever else it happens to be, not a problem remotely. But in other cultures, I do a lot in Germany, they're very quiet at the back. They will not, if there's bosses in the room, they will not ask a question. And really it's up to the facilitators to drag out responses to them. I worry a little bit that how we manage that transition to having an AI tool, when people will just, it's easy to look it up on the phone, or rather than engage the brains. And it's the job of the facilitator to get them to engage the brains, particularly as old guys like me are retiring and we're trying to bring the new generation along. Whereas AI is the new shiny. And we know even with ChatGPT, if you read the terms and conditions, if you're not very careful, you're sharing your intellectual property with Microsoft for training this AI. There've got to be guardrails and limits on that. And I just wondered how you saw that going.
Yeah, I think I concur with all that you're saying. I think one of the key things is being the human in the loop for that, so that you need people, like you and me and others who have, the colleague I referenced who was asking the question about the emissions and found that it was actually only because he knew what he knew, he was able to further interrogate, and then encourage our younger colleagues to do the same. I think it's, so the mindset thing comes in there, I think, in terms of doing that.
Can I just throw a comment in as well?
Sure. No, of course.
You probably know Graham Laughlin. Graham Laughlin
Yes,
did a webinar just 4 months ago.
Okay.
Introduction to HazardEx. 400 people attended remotely.
Okay.
We did a poll.
Okay.
A poll with it. Most of them mechanical engineers.
Yeah.
86% never had any training in HazardEx but were required to attend HazardEx.
Yeah.
And then we went down further. The majority had never been trained how to interpret a P&ID.
Wow. Okay.
Now, how can you do HazardEx load of anything without those skills?
Yeah, no, I mean, just briefly answering the question. So when I'm working as a HazardEx chair, I always try to take the terms of reference and make it into what I call an intro presentation, and get the key stakeholders before the HazardEx to agree with what are the aims, what are the key hazards, what we're trying to do, and then to present that on the first morning, so that we've all got a sort of, backed by the stakeholders approach and then encourage people to, as you're saying, to say, but we're not all right, and if anybody has any points, please bring them up. And also if people, it's going on a bit and I'll stop now, if new people, one of the things I do is if new people come into the room after 3 days, I get them to introduce themselves and get others to introduce themselves, because they need to be part of the team.
It doesn't work on Teams. It just doesn't.
No, it's hard. Yeah, I agree. It's hard.
People look at 2 screens, they're watching YouTube on one and Netflix and participating on the other.
It's challenging, yeah. But no, thanks for the question.
We have one more question.
Oh, yeah. Hello.
Hi, I work for a process safety consultancy as well. I've done quite a bit of scribing and I'm just sort of starting to get into the chairing and facilitating side. And I thought you said, I think I want to know a little bit more about how AI actually, what that looks like in the HazardEx. I think I'm imagining a sort of a scribe role. You said something really interesting about the level transmitter conversation, and when you asked AI about it, it unsurprisingly supported his conclusion, which I think is something that whenever I use the AI, it seeks to please almost. It's always how do you manage that bias towards your predispositions?
I think first of all, it's recognising that there is a bias, so in the case of the guy I quoted, he had an idea and he probably had a loaded question for ChatGPT and got the answer that he wanted, which is relatively easy to do. But being a scribe, I think one of the ways that AI tools could be used, some of the tools, especially the bespoke tools, is to have the scribe, who's often like you know, sort of perhaps a junior process engineer, then with sufficient experience to be able to sort of, in addition to doing all the hard work that you do, but to have a sort of an eye on the tool, to be able to ask, to pass that on to the chair to ask questions. Because for me, the tools are most useful for the questions they ask rather than the answers they give. So I think that's probably one way of doing it. But yeah, thanks for the question. All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, Angus.
Thanks, Tom.
With